You know, usually when we hear the word salvation, we immediately picture a courtroom.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like a very rigid, formal setting.
Right. There's a judge, a heavy wooden gavel, and this massive, terrifying ledger that's just recording every single mistake we've ever
Yeah, a
made.
little detailed, yeah.
And salvation, at least in that framework, it operates as this last-minute legal pardon. And you get acquitted, the gavel comes down, and you basically walk out of the courtroom.
Free to go, essentially.
Exactly. But today we're looking at a stack of sources, a remarkably dense theological manuscript, alongside some fascinating historical commentary that just completely demolishes that entire courtroom idea.
It really does. It's a total paradigm shift.
It is. We are, bypassing all that rigid legal terminology to examine what these sources argue is this profoundly emotional relational rescue mission.
Which is such a refreshing angle.
Truly. And we are so glad you're here with us as we explore this perspective. Okay, let's unpack this.
I'm really looking forward to analyzing this material because, well, the overarching goal of these sources is to strip away centuries of complex jargon.
Yeah, all that heavy theological baggage.
Exactly. When you peel back the layers of ancient justice systems that humanity has, historically projected onto divine texts, this manuscript makes a singular, really disruptive argument.
And it's a bold one.
It is. It insists that salvation isn't primarily about avoiding a guilty verdict or even securing a spatial relocation from hell to heaven.
Right, the whole getting out of the fire thing.
Yeah. Instead, it is fundamentally about the restoration of a fractured parent-child relationship.
Which is huge,
Right.
because to really grasp the mechanics of any rescue mission, we have to establish what was actually lost in the first place, right?
Absolutely. You have to know the stakes.
And the manuscript opens with this bold claim that just sets the trajectory for everything else. It literally states that salvation is not just about being spared from hell, but in essence, it is all about God salvaging the parent-child relationship.
What's fascinating here is the deliberate linguistic bridge the author builds.
Between salvation and salvaging.
Yes, exactly. It completely reorients the entire paradigm. I mean, think about what it actually means to salvage something. You don't salvage trash.
No, you salvage treasure.
Right. The word implies immense intrinsic value. So the text is framing the fundamental problem of humanity not as a logistical puzzle of managing a population of rule breakers.
Like a warden in a prison.
Exactly. It's framing it as a relational catastrophe. The rift is exclusively between a parent and a child.
If I'm looking at this critically, though, and I think a lot of people listening might feel this too, if the primary issue isn't about avoiding punishment, why are we, collectively so obsessed with the punishment aspect?
Oh, that's a great question.
Because it seems like that spatial problem, getting out of the fire, is the only thing that dominates historical and modern conversations about faith.
Well, the historical context actually provides a really fascinating lens here. We gravitate toward the punishment model because human beings naturally organize society around cause and effect.
Reward and penalty.
Right.
Yeah.
We rely on that to maintain societal order. I mean, ancient cultures especially operated on rigid systems of appeasing unpredictable deities.
Oh, to avoid, famine or war or whatever.
Exactly. And then later on, medieval feudalism introduced these really strict concepts of honor, offenses, and legal debts.
Right. So you offend the lord of the manor, you have to pay the debt.
Precisely. So as theological concepts evolved, early translators and thinkers basically just mapped those feudal legal systems directly onto this text.
Wow. So we project our own human demand for retribution onto the divine.
Yeah, we assume I broke a rule, therefore the penalty absolutely must be executed, and salvation is simply a canceled check.
That projection fundamentally changes how we view the rescue, doesn't it? I mean, it makes me think of how we treat objects versus how we treat relationships.
Oh, so?
Well, let's say you have a priceless, intricate pocket watch that belonged to your great-grandfather.
Okay, a family heirloom.
Right. Sparing that watch from a fire just means grabbing it before it burns, right? You saved it from destruction.
You kept it from melting.
Exactly. But salvaging it means taking it inside, painstakingly repairing the tiny gears, polishing the glass, and returning it to the mantle where it belongs.
That's a beautiful distinction.
Thanks. It just seems like the text is arguing that just pulling humanity out of the fire is, well, it's an incomplete view of the mission.
It is, and the watch analogy really highlights the difference between survival and restoration. But the manuscript actually pushes us to take that a step further.
Okay, how so?
Well, unlike a pocket watch, human beings possess agency.
Oh, right. The watch doesn't choose to be in the fire.
Exactly. We didn't just accidentally slip and fall into the garbage. The text argues we actively ran toward the incinerator,
Wow.
and that requires a completely different, infinitely more complex type of rescue.
Because you can't just repair a gear in a human being. They have to want to come back.
Precisely.
And the manuscript gives a very specific and honestly deeply tragic diagnosis for why we ran toward the fire in the first place. It claims humanity was, quote, deceived by the devil into rejecting God as our loving father, unquote.
And then it follows up with that really stark admission.
Yeah, we forsook him.
Let's just pause on the psychological mechanics of that word, deceived.
It's a loaded word.
Very. The text places the primary blame for this cosmic separation on a catastrophic misunderstanding. I mean, humanity didn't look at a perfectly loving parent and cynically decide to rebel out of sheer unprovoked malice.
Right, we didn't just wake up and say, I hate you.
No, we walked away because our perception was hijacked. We were manipulated into believing a lie about the father's core character.
So we were gaslit.
Completely gaslit. We were led to believe that the parent was actually a tyrant, a threat to our freedom.
It's less like a rebellious teenager storming out to just have a good time, and honestly much more like a hostage situation where the captive develops a profound case of Stockholm Syndrome.
That's a terrifying but really accurate way to look at it.
Right, because if the kidnapper successfully convinces the hostage that the police outside are actually, like, corrupt assassins coming to kill them,
Yeah.
the hostage will barricade the door.
They'll fight the people trying to save them.
Exactly. They will actively fight their own rescue team. They aren't running away because they hate the rescuers. They are running away because they are terrified of a monster that doesn't actually exist.
That captures the tragedy perfectly. The hostility is entirely one-sided.
It's built on a complete fabrication.
Yeah. And the text phrases this with such intentional heartbreak, stating, "Our loving Father has never left or forsaken us. We forsook him."
The parent remains completely steady.
Entirely loving, yeah. While the child barricades the door from the inside out of, misplaced terror.
Which is wild, because in normal human dynamics, if someone cuts ties with you based on a lie, like, if a friend believes some baseless rumor and just blocks your number, pride dictates that you let them go.
You just wash your hands of the situation.
Right. You figure, well, if they want to believe that about me, that's their problem. I'm not going to chase them down to prove my innocence.
Human pride is a powerful deterrent.
It really is. But the father's response in this text completely subverts that natural human impulse to protect one's pride.
It really does. The manuscript addresses that directly by stating, God the Father loved us from antiquity.
From antiquity, that's such a striking phrase.
It is, because it implies a foundational reality. It suggests a love that predates the deception entirely, a relationship established before the mistake was even made.
So it's not conditional on what the child does.
Exactly. It cannot be altered by the child's subsequent actions. And then it says, he came looking for us, just as Hilder. He looked for Adam immediately after his disobedience.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the detail that stands out to me the most there is the speed of the pursuit. The text highlights that God looked for Adam immediately.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the author is deliberately dismantling the traditional reading of the Genesis narrative here.
Because usually that story is taught like a scary campfire tale, right?
Yep. The story of Adam and Eve hiding in the garden is so often painted as God patrolling the grounds like an angry warden looking for inmates who broke curfew.
Flashlight in hand, ready to punish them.
Exactly. But this manuscript recontextualizes that search entirely. God is not a distant, offended deity sitting on a throne waiting for a groveling apology or a negotiated settlement.
He's down in the dirt.
Yes, he is an active seeker. The text explicitly states he relentlessly sought us.
That phrase, relentlessly sought us, it brings to mind the visceral panic of a parent in a crowded place.
Oh, absolutely.
Imagine being at a massive outdoor festival, and for just a fraction of a second, your toddler lets go of your hand and vanishes into the crowd.
Every parent's worst nightmare.
Right. And maybe they wandered off because they saw a shiny toy, or maybe they realized they weren't supposed to wander and decided to hide under a table out of shame.
Because they knew they broke the rule.
Exactly. But when you, the parent, realize they are gone, your reaction isn't to cross your arms and demand an apology for breaking the hand-holding rule.
No, you discard all sense of personal dignity in that moment.
You don't care who's watching.
Not at all. You drop your bags, you start shouting their name, you enlist total strangers to help you.
Because you are entirely consumed by the singular mission of...
Recovering the child.
Right.
There is zero room for pride when your child is lost.
But, locating the child presents a massive psychological hurdle if we factor that deception back in.
The Stockholm Syndrome piece.
Yeah. Let's say you finally find them hiding under a table. If that child is fully convinced, due to the deception we talked about earlier, that you are a monster who's going to harm them, words are just not going to be enough.
You can't just talk a captive out of that deep-seated trauma and fear.
Right. You can't just say, hey, I'm nice, come on out.
No, you need undeniable proof.
Yeah.
And this perfectly explains why the text insists that the cross wasn't just a penalty, but a physical demonstration.
An act of communication.
Exactly. The manuscript points directly to the crucifixion and states, quote, God the Son came as Jesus Christ and him crucified to be the definitive display and proof of God as our Father, who himself tenderly loves us.
See, this requires a total mental pivot for you, the listener. Going back to that courtroom we demolished at the beginning, if a crucifixion isn't a legal transaction to balance a ledger, then the violence of it serves a totally different, highly communicative purpose.
It serves as the ultimate, indisputable counterargument to the devil's deception.
Wow.
If we look at the psychological mechanics again, how do you actually convince a terrified hostage that you aren't the bad guy?
You have to show them.
Right. And why does the manuscript focus on the blood of Jesus? Because in ancient contexts, and arguably even in human psychology today, ultimate sacrifice is the only undeniable proof of absolute devotion.
Because talk is cheap.
Talk is very cheap.
Yeah.
You can fake affection, you can fake words, but you cannot fake voluntarily surrendering your own life to protect someone else.
It completely short-circuits the lie.
Because a monster does not die for its victims.
That is so powerful. It's the parent dropping their weapons, walking into the line of fire, and proving at the highest possible cost, I am not who you were told I am. I am exactly who I always claimed to be.
The manuscript summarizes this mechanism brilliantly when it says, the misunderstanding and strife have been resolved by the blood of Jesus once and for all time.
Once and for all time.
Yes, the cross is not the appeasement of an angry, volatile God. It is the definitive resolution of a family feud. It is the absolute end of the misunderstanding.
So what does this all mean for the listener today? I mean, if I'm applying this to everyday life, it seems like looking at the cross as a proof of love rather than a legal mechanism completely kills religious anxiety.
It does, because the pressure's off.
Right. If salvation is just a mechanism of forgiveness, I'm always going to be wondering if my account is overdrawn.
You're walking on eggshells.
I'd be constantly checking my spiritual credit score, hoping I haven't, exhausted my pardon with my latest mistake.
And that anxiety you were describing is a classic symptom of remaining in the courtroom, operating under a system of ledgers and debts.
It's exhausting.
But look at the text's triumphant conclusion to this act. It says, we who were once far off have now been reconciled to God as his beloved children.
So the relational breach is healed.
Completely. The strife is permanently over. The ledger doesn't just have a zero balance, The ledger has been burned.
So what does this all mean for what happens next? If the war is over, the misunderstanding is completely cleared up, and the legal ledger is just gone, what does the Father actually expect from us moving forward?
The manuscript gives an answer that feels shockingly raw.
It really does. It quotes the ancient text of Hosea, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Hosea chapter 6, verse 6, which reads, I don't want your sacrifices. I want your love. I don't want your offerings. I want you to know me.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
Religion and faith, both historically and practically, are defined almost entirely by sacrifices and offerings.
True.
I mean, attending services, following strict moral codes, performing rituals, giving money. This text is suggesting that the divine doesn't actually require any of that infrastructure.
The historical context of Hosea makes this even more profound, actually.
Because Hosea was an ancient prophet, right?
Yes, who was instructed to marry a partner who repeatedly betrayed him. And he was told to do this specifically to demonstrate to the people that God's love was relentless and non-transactional.
So it wasn't based on her good behavior.
Exactly.
Right.
Not at all. So when this manuscript pulls that specific quote, it reveals a profound vulnerability on God's part.
Yeah.
It suggests that the entire infrastructure of religious performance completely misses the point. The author synthesizes this entire sweeping rescue mission into a phrase of astonishing intimacy. They write that the Father is essentially crying out, baby, come back.
Baby, come back. It is so informal.
It is.
Honestly, it almost feels too casual for a dense theological text.
But that informality is the entire point. It strips away all the heavy, ornate robes of religious formality.
It removes the judicial bench.
Yes, it leaves you with a parent standing on the porch waiting. Think about it.
Mm.
If your child runs away and you finally get them back, you do not want them to hand you a resume of their good deeds.
Or a list of chores they've completed to earn their spot at the dinner table.
Exactly. You just want them to know you. You just want them to be home, resting securely in the relationship.
For anyone listening right now, that framing must be a massive antidote to burnout.
It really should be.
Because we live in an era of relentless performance metrics. I mean, between constant information overload, trying to optimize ourselves at work, proving our worth in social circles.
It's nonstop.
It is. And yes, even in our spirituality, people are just exhausted. We are tired from constantly bringing, quote unquote, offerings to a God we secretly fear is perpetually disappointed in us.
It circles back to the core premise we established at the very beginning of this deep dive. The parent doesn't want a transaction.
Right.
The parent wants the child. The demands for perfect performance, the constant anxiety about spiritual credit scores, those are all lingering remnants of that original deception we talked about.
It's the residual belief that you still have to appease a demanding judge rather than simply embracing a loving father.
Exactly.
Let's just trace the journey we've been on through these forces today. We started by dismantling that widespread concept of salvation as a cold, transactional courtroom pardon.
And we explored the psychological mechanics of how humanity was hijacked by a catastrophic deception.
Right, how we basically barricaded ourselves against a perfectly loving father. Then we looked at a relentless, frantic pursuit that predates time itself.
And how the cross wasn't a penalty paid to an angry judge, but rather the ultimate bloody proof required to shatter the lie that God is a monster.
It's a complete reframing. And the final plea of the text is a direct, intimate call to you, the listener. It says, "Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your heart in disbelief."
This raises an important question to chew on as you navigate the rest of your week.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Well, if this text is right, if the Father has permanently dropped the ledger against you, and you are no longer standing trial in a cosmic courtroom, how does that change the way you hold ledgers against other people?
Oh, wow.
If your own debts are canceled and the strife is over, does that mean you finally have to step down from the judge's bench in your own relationships?
That completely flips the script. Are you still demanding offerings, sacrifices, and perfect performance from your friends, your family, or your coworkers?
Essentially mimicking a legal system that the Father already destroyed.
That is heavy. Let that realization sink in. Thank you for diving into these incredible sources with us today. We'll catch you next time.